Pieter Bruegel the Elder was an artist of the Northern Renaissance whose visually engrossing paintings offer a celebration of the common mass of humanity, in contrast to the pious religious painting which dominated much Renaissance art of the previous century. Born in what is now the Netherlands in the 1520s, reputedly into a peasant family, his work focuses on themes such as rural working life, religion, and superstition, and the political and social intrigues of his day. These themes were tackled with an unmistakable, droll, and often grotesque humor, an interest in the collective over the individual, and a healthy skepticism for narratives of great deeds and men. From the Dutch Golden Age painters of the following century to the realists of 19th century France and beyond, any artist who has cast their eye over their subject with an honesty debunking mythology works in the spirit of the man sometimes known as Peasant Bruegel. Pieter Bruegel the Elder's The Massacre of the Innocents, painted between 1565 and 1567, is one of his most haunting and politically charged masterpieces. Currently housed in the Royal Collection, the painting adapts the biblical narrative of King Herod's infamous decree from Matthew 2:16. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious, and he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. The horrific event, which sought to eliminate the prophesied Christ child, serves as the foundation of Bruegel's powerful work. The version by Bruegel the Elder in the Royal Collection was acquired by Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II and was in Prague by about 1600. Rudolf disliked the graphic scene, which depicted many infants being slaughtered by soldiers carrying his own imperial heraldry of the double-headed eagle, and had the children painted over with details, small objects including food and animals, so that it became a scene of plunder, not a massacre of babies. The later overpainting became apparent during conservation work in 1998, and Lorne Campbell identified the painting in the Royal Collection as the original version by Bruegel the Elder. This version was probably one of many paintings from the Imperial Collection looted from Prague Castle by a Swedish army in 1648, at the end of the 30 Years' War. It was in the collection of Queen Christina by 1652, and came into the British Royal Collection when it was acquired by Charles II in exile at Breda in 1660. At first glance, the painting appears to depict a tranquil Flemish village, blanketed in snow. Bruegel, one of the first artists to paint snow-covered landscapes, cleverly grounds this biblical tragedy within a contemporary setting familiar to his viewers. A closer look reveals the unsettling violence Spanish soldiers, identifiable by their uniforms, tear through the village, ransacking homes and carrying out King Herod's ruthless command. Mothers wail in anguish, fathers struggle in vain to resist, and children are pulled from their parents' arms. The chaos sprawls across the canvas, as villagers, some paralyzed by shock, others futilely trying to protect their families, are swept into the tide of cruelty. Bruegel's genius lies in his ability to balance vivid realism with allegorical meaning. By transposing the biblical massacre to a Flemish setting, the painting becomes a veiled critique of the Spanish occupation of the Netherlands during the 80 Years' War. Herod's soldiers are a clear stand-in for the Spanish forces who brutally suppressed Flemish uprisings under Philip II. Through this, Bruegel transforms a biblical tale into a poignant and daring political statement. He exposes the injustices of his own time while linking them to the eternal themes of human suffering and power unchecked. The composition draws the viewer's eye across the snow-blanketed scene, from soldiers tearing through cottages to the desolate figures scattered on the icy ground. The snow itself holds symbolic significance. Its purity contrasts sharply with the bloodshed staining the village. Bruegel heightens the emotional depth through his meticulous depiction of faces. Grief-stricken mothers, indifferent soldiers, and helpless witnesses each convey a different layer of the unfolding tragedy. The animals, dogs, cattle, and even birds carry their own symbolic weight, indifferent to human suffering, a stark reminder of nature's silence in the face of cruelty. While the biblical subject would have been familiar to 16th century viewers, Bruegel's approach is profoundly modern. He focuses less on the monumental drama of the narrative and more on the personal, human cost of violence. The villagers are not abstract figures, but individuals, people the viewer might recognize as neighbors, friends, or family. Bruegel's decision to place the Holy Family subtly within the crowd reinforces this message. In the chaos, the line between sacred and ordinary is blurred. Joseph and Mary are depicted as inconsequential figures, hidden among the masses as they flee with their infant child. This deliberate choice reminds us that monumental events often unfold within the mundane rhythms of everyday life. Through the massacre of the innocents, Bruegel creates a work that is both timeless and deeply tied to its historical moment. It resonates as a chilling reflection on humanity's capacity for violence, echoing across centuries to confront viewers with uncomfortable truths. This is not merely a biblical story, but a universal allegory, a reminder that power, when wielded without compassion, can turn innocence to ash. The snow may cover the village, but it cannot conceal the horrors beneath. Pieter Bruegel forces us to look closely, to acknowledge the suffering and to reckon with the enduring legacy of cruelty in our shared human history. The land of cocaine, painted in 1567, is a satirical masterpiece that brings to life the medieval myth of a utopian paradise, Cockaigne, a place of endless indulgence and leisure. The painting presents a curious scene. 3 figures, an exhausted soldier, a scholarly man, and a peasant lie sprawled on the ground, satiated and overcome by sloth. Above them, roasted fowl tumble from the sky, and a pig with a knife in its back strolls freely, ready to be devoured. The very earth seems to offer up its bounty with no effort at all. The composition's details, meticulously painted, reveal Bruegel's sharp critique of gluttony and laziness, 2 of the 7 deadly sins. Unlike traditional depictions of paradise, Bruegel Cockaigne offers no spiritual fulfillment. It is a hollow world of excess and moral emptiness. This is a land where abundance becomes absurd. A pancake roof adorns one house, and food literally crawls toward those too idle to lift a finger. Bruegel's message reflects the beliefs of his time, rooted in Christian morality and medieval folklore, in an era of harsh realities, famine, war, and poverty. Such fantasies of effortless luxury were both escapist and cautionary. His humorous, almost comical portrayal urges viewers to reflect on the dangers of overindulgence and the emptiness of a life devoid of work and purpose. This painting, now housed in the Alte Pinakothek in Munich, demonstrates Bruegel's talent for blending moral allegory with the everyday realities of 16th century Europe. Through biting satire, the land of Cockaigne holds up a mirror to human desires, reminding us that true satisfaction cannot be found in mindless abundance, but rather in meaningful action and moderation. In 1563, Pieter Bruegel the Elder created the Adoration of the Magi in the Snow, a small yet extraordinary oil-on-oak panel now housed in the Oscar Reinhardt collection Am Römerholz in Winterthur, Switzerland. This painting is remarkable for its unique fusion of biblical narrative and Bruegel's distinct Northern Renaissance vision. Bruegel transforms the traditional adoration of the Magi into a winter scene, heavily inspired by the snow-covered landscapes of his time. The composition marks one of the earliest depictions of snow in Western art, a theme Bruegel pioneered and explored further in works like The Hunters in the Snow. He replaces the exotic Middle Eastern setting of the Nativity with a Northern European village blanketed in snow, making the sacred event feel immediate and relatable to his contemporary viewers. At the center, the figures of Mary, Joseph, and the Magi gather reverently, surrounded by villagers going about their daily lives. The grandeur of the biblical moment contrasts with the mundane yet picturesque activities of rural folk, such as chopping wood and trudging through the icy paths. Bruegel's focus on human experience amidst the divine narrative creates a poignant harmony between the sacred and the ordinary. Critically, the snow is more than a setting, it plays a symbolic role, perhaps reflecting spiritual purity or the cold, harsh realities of life in the 16th century. This blending of symbolism and realism elevates the work, a hallmark of Bruegel's artistic genius. Technical analysis reveals Bruegel meticulous underdrawings and brushwork, showcasing his skillful layering of paint to create depth and texture. The painting's small size, approximately 35 and 55 centimeters, emphasizes its intimate and contemplative nature, encouraging viewers to observe its intricate details closely. The adoration of the Magi in the snow stands as a testament to Bruegel's ability to reinterpret biblical stories with sensitivity, embedding them seamlessly into the landscapes of his world. It reflects not only his artistic innovation, but also his profound understanding of humanity, nature, and spirituality. Late in his career, in addition to his many landscape paintings, Bruegel created various works depicting religious stories and scenes from everyday life. The latter proved to be more significant and enduringly influential, generating centuries of art historical debate around the intended message of certain works. Some of the earliest writers on Bruegel, including Van Mander, took his paintings at face value, as humorous expositions of the lascivious behavior of the serf class. More recent interpretation, however, has emphasized Bruegel attempts to elevate that class through celebratory representation. As the art historians Rosemarie and Rainer Hagen put it, the fact that he should consider such a thing at all worthy of depiction distinguishes him from almost all of his contemporaries. The Italians and Romanists emphasized what distinguished man from the animal and plant world. Bruegel, in contrast, emphasized their similarities, the nature, begotten, not made element in man. William Dello Russo expands on this idea, writing that Bruegel's vivid and lusty depictions of rural life can be seen as forming part of a growing sense of national identity. The fact that Bruegel lived during politically troubling times has also compounded speculation over the interpretation of his work. In the mid-1500s, the modern-day Netherlands, along with Belgium and Luxembourg, collectively known as the Low or Netherlandish countries, consisted of a series of provinces under the rule of the Habsburg dynasty. In 1556, possession of the territories passed to King Philip II of Spain, who attempted to impose a stricter form of Catholic rule, sending the Duke of Alba to lead a brutal military campaign in Brussels to suppress Protestant rebellion. According to art historians Rosemarie and Rainer Hagen, Bruegel, consistent eschewal of the iconography of Catholic saints and martyrs, in spite of the religious focus of much of his work, can be seen as a coded rejection of the philosophy and bloodthirsty campaigns of the Counter-Reformation. One story which suggests that Pieter Bruegel was quite conscious of the political significance of his work is told by Van Mander. Not long before the artist's death, His biographer states, Bruegel asked his wife to burn certain works, believing that their content might put her in danger. Pieter Bruegel, The Magpie on the Gallows, painted in 1568, stands as one of his most mysterious and compelling works. This oil-on-wood panel, housed today in the Hessisches Landesmuseum in Darmstadt, reveals Bruegel's ability to blend allegory, landscape, and human life into a single, thought-provoking composition. The painting's high vantage point opens onto a lush, sweeping landscape. In the foreground, a gallows stands prominently, crowned by a magpie. Beneath this ominous symbol, a group of peasants gathers to dance in a carefree celebration. To one side, a lone figure watches the scene unfold, gazing toward the gallows, perhaps with a sense of unease. The image carries layers of symbolism. The magpie perched atop the gallows is often associated with gossip, deceit, and slander in Flemish folklore. It serves as a warning. Loose tongues and malicious words could bring someone to the gallows, a grim reminder of justice or oppression. Pieter Bruegel's inclusion of the gallows reflects the harsh realities of 16th century life, where executions were a common spectacle and a symbol of power. Yet in stark contrast to this foreboding structure, the villagers dance with seemingly reckless abandon. Pieter Bruegel's masterful juxtaposition invites questions. Is this a portrayal of human resilience and the determination to find joy despite the ever-present shadow of death? Or is it a darker critique of humanity's ability to ignore its inevitable fate? The gallows looms above them like an unspoken threat, a constant reminder of mortality and the consequences of transgressions. The natural world plays an essential role in framing this human drama. Rolling hills, distant mountains, and lush greenery extend far into the background. Pieter Bruegel, always a keen observer of nature, situates the scene within a vast, uncaring landscape, suggesting humanity's smallness in the face of greater forces, be they natural, societal, or divine. It's worth noting that the magpie on the gallows was painted during the final year of Bruegel's life, at a time when the Spanish Inquisition brought violence and persecution to the Netherlands. The gallows may therefore serve as a powerful political symbol, referencing the brutal suppression of dissent and rebellion. The lone observer in the scene with his back turned to the viewer may represent Bruegel himself, silently bearing witness to the tragedies of his time. Ultimately, the magpie on the gallows combines allegory, social critique, and landscape artistry into a single, enigmatic work. It challenges viewers to reflect on themes of life and death, judgment and joy, and the tension between human existence and the inescapable forces that govern it. Bruegel's genius lies in his ability to make the ordinary extraordinary, to find meaning in moments both grand and mundane, and to invite us into a world where life and death dance side by side. Painted in 1568, The Misanthrope by Pieter Bruegel. The Elder is a profound commentary on human nature, morality, and the folly of isolating oneself from the realities of life. This masterpiece, now displayed in the National Museum of Capodimonte in Naples, reflects Bruegel's signature blend of sharp wit and allegory. The scene centers around an elderly man in a dark robe, walking solemnly with his hands clasped in resignation. His white beard and downcast gaze suggest a retreat from the world's corruption, a man disillusioned with humanity. Yet Bruegel reveals the irony of his plight. A small figure, barefoot and mischievous, follows closely behind, cutting the strings of the misanthrope's purse. In Bruegel's world, withdrawal does not guarantee virtue. The thief encased in a transparent sphere with a cross symbolizes vanity and deception. Even as the misanthrope rejects society, he becomes oblivious to the very treachery he scorns. His isolation blinds him not only to the theft, but also to the thorns scattered across his path, metaphors for the pitfalls of ignorance and self-absorption. The painting's Flemish inscription translated as, "Because the world is perfidious, I am going into mourning," captures the misanthrope's fatal flaw. Rather than facing life's challenges with wisdom and action, he succumbs to despair. In contrast, in the background, a shepherd tends his flock embodying virtue, humility, and responsibility. Bruegel juxtaposes these figures to emphasize that true goodness lies in fulfilling one's duties amidst an imperfect world. The misanthrope stands as a timeless parable. To disengage from society is to abandon the opportunity for virtue and growth. Bruegel challenges us to recognize the complexities of human nature, to engage with life, and to see through the deceptive appearances of both vanity and isolation. This intricate painting, a masterful mix of moral lesson and social satire, remains one of Bruegel's most thought-provoking works, inviting viewers to reflect on their own place in the world. In 1568, Pieter Bruegel painted The Blind Leading the Blind, a haunting masterpiece now housed in the Museo di Capodimonte in Naples, Italy. This work stands as both a vivid visual narrative and a piercing allegory, capturing themes of vulnerability, human frailty, and spiritual blindness. The painting portrays 6 blind men stumbling forward in a diagonal line, each grasping onto the figure ahead, placing their trust in flawed leadership. The first man has already fallen into a ditch, his body twisted in helpless disarray. The others follow, oblivious to the fate awaiting them. Bruegel's depiction of the figures is marked by startling realism. Pale faces, sunken eyes, and blank stares give the men a heartbreaking humanity. Bruegel's careful attention to anatomical detail suggests he may have studied medical conditions of the time to achieve such authenticity. Set against a muted rural landscape, the composition conveys an inexorable sense of movement, one that leads to ruin rather than salvation. The stark diagonal line formed by the blind men becomes the central force of the painting, guiding our eyes toward their impending fall. In the background, a church spire rises above the village. It is a symbol of spiritual salvation, distant yet visible, but tragically unnoticed by the men, underscoring the theme of spiritual blindness. The inspiration for this work comes from the biblical verse in Matthew 15:14, where Christ says, "If the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch." Bruegel transforms this passage into a profound parable. The physical affliction of the blind men becomes a metaphor for ignorance, pride, and the consequences of blindly following misguided leaders. It is a critique of human folly that transcends its time, resonating with audiences even today. What makes The Blind Leading the Blind so compelling is Bruegel's ability to blend realism with allegory. By grounding this moral tale in the humble setting of a Flemish village, he invites viewers to see themselves reflected in the scene. The blind men are not abstract symbols, but deeply human figures, fragile, vulnerable, and tragically unaware. Nearly 5 centuries later, Bruegel's masterpiece remains a chilling, cautionary tale. It compels us to question our path, the leaders we follow, and the choices we make. Through his unflinching portrayal of the human condition, Bruegel warns of the peril of ignorance and the importance of seeking clarity, truth, and wisdom in a world often clouded by uncertainty. This lively masterpiece immerses viewers into the heart of a peasant celebration, offering a rich tapestry of social commentary, human activity, and meticulous detail that defined Bruegel's approach to genre painting. At first glance, the scene bursts with energy and warmth. Bruegel captures a wedding feast in a rural barn, transforming an ordinary peasant gathering into a vivid tableau of life. The bride sits demurely at the center, under a makeshift canopy marked by a green curtain. Her stoic demeanor contrasts with the bustle around her. She's easily identified by her motionless posture, hands folded modestly on her lap, and the crown above her head, which symbolizes her new role. Bruegel populates the space with peasants of all ages, each figure engaged in a specific task or behavior. On the left, musicians play the bagpipes, providing festive music. In the foreground, 2 men carry plates of food-likely porridge or soup on a wooden door serving as an improvised tray. Their determined strides draw the viewer's attention to the communal simplicity of the feast. Guests, sitting on benches and makeshift furniture, lean eagerly forward to receive their portions, their lively gestures emphasizing the peasant community's joy and hunger. The children scattered throughout the scene add to the vibrancy. A small boy to the right eagerly licks his fingers, unable to resist the food in front of him, while another child clings curiously to the serving tray, Bruegel often depicted children with honesty, capturing their innocence and mischief without idealizing them. The setting itself, the barn, reinforces the rustic charm of the painting. Tools hang on the walls, straw covers the ground, and rough wooden furniture fills the space. These details emphasize Bruegel's commitment to depicting the reality of peasant life, a subject often overlooked in art of the time. The composition is masterful. Bruegel creates a strong sense of movement and cohesion by placing his figures in overlapping clusters. Diagonal lines such as the table, the servers' movements, and the positioning of the guests draw the viewer's eye across the scene, encouraging exploration of every detail. This dynamic arrangement adds to the sense of a bustling, immersive atmosphere. Symbolically, the Peasant Wedding offers more than mere observation of a rural celebration. While it portrays joy and togetherness, it also reflects themes of modesty and humility. Unlike grand wedding feasts depicted in courtly art, this is a scene of simplicity, a celebration of life's basic pleasures. Bruegel's work also invites viewers to reflect on social commentary. Though the painting is vibrant and cheerful, the depiction of peasants eating with fervor and improvising with tools like the wooden door suggests a lack of luxury, highlighting the harsh realities of rural life. In The Peasant Wedding, Bruegel masterfully blends genre painting with subtle social reflection. He elevates the daily lives of common people into art of profound depth and beauty, reminding us of the enduring humanity that connects all walks of life. Nearly 5 centuries later, this masterpiece continues to captivate viewers with its warmth, detail, and timeless celebration of community. The peasant dance continues Bruegel's fascination with peasant life, presenting a lively scene that vibrates with motion, festivity, and nuanced social commentary. Often paired with The Peasant Wedding as one of his most celebrated genre paintings, this work captures the joy, chaos, and rituals of rural celebrations in 16th century Flanders. The painting depicts an open-air festival likely tied to a church feast day where peasants gather to dance, drink, and enjoy life. At the center, a couple dances energetically, their bodies mid-motion and their faces flushed with cheer. The man's exuberant posture and wide-brimmed hat emphasize his carefree demeanor while his partner leans into him, arms joined in a rhythm of shared motion. To the left, a group of musicians sits under a tree, playing a bagpipe, a traditional instrument of the peasantry. The music they produce fuels the festive mood, with other peasants swaying to the rhythm or laughing in enjoyment. Their worn clothes and rough features, rendered in Pieter Bruegel's unflinching realism, speak to their humble station in life. Yet their actions, laughing, embracing, and dancing, reflect a profound zest for life. In the foreground, Bruegel introduces symbolic details that anchor the painting's deeper meaning. A man kneels near the dancers, his jug of beer clutched tightly, while another figure reclines drunkenly on the grass. These elements remind viewers of the excesses of earthly pleasures, drinking and revelry, which can lead to moral decline. A church in the background, partially obscured, provides a subtle juxtaposition between the sacred and the secular, emphasizing the peasants' carefree abandonment of religious decorum during their celebrations. The composition is carefully structured, with strong diagonal lines created by the dancers' postures and the placement of the musicians. This dynamic arrangement infuses the painting with a sense of motion and energy. Bruegel's use of earthy tones, rich reds, browns and greens, further enhances the grounded, rustic atmosphere of the scene. While the peasant dance may appear to celebrate peasant life, Bruegel's depiction contains layers of subtle critique. The rowdy behavior, excess drinking, and unchecked revelry mirror moral lessons often preached in the 16th century about the dangers of indulgence. Bruegel's art frequently reflects a moralizing undertone, aligning with contemporary concerns about sin and virtue. However, his portrayal also carries an element of empathy. The peasants, despite their excesses, exude a vitality and authenticity that contrast sharply with the artifice of courtly life. Bruegel's ability to capture both the physical energy and the deeper symbolism of peasant celebrations marked a turning point in the depiction of everyday life. His paintings elevated genre scenes, often dismissed as low art, into works of profound artistic and cultural significance. The peasant dance remains a testament to his unparalleled ability to merge realism with allegory, presenting a vivid portrayal of life's fleeting pleasures and timeless human behaviors. In the peasant dance, Bruegel immortalizes a moment of rural joy while inviting viewers to reflect on the deeper tensions between indulgence and morality. The result is a masterpiece that resonates across centuries, celebrating the vitality of human experience with unflinching honesty and masterful artistry. In 1568, during the final year of his life, Pieter Bruegel the Elder created the Beggars, also known as the Cripples. This small but haunting oil-on-panel painting, now housed in the Louvre Museum in Paris, reveals Bruegel's unmatched ability to combine artistic realism with layers of symbolism and social critique. The scene before us is stark and unsettling. 5 crippled beggars gather in an undefined space, their twisted limbs supported by crude wooden crutches. Their frail bodies and ragged clothing speak of a life marked by hardship, yet their heads are crowned with curious hats-fools' caps adorned with feathers. These small details are far from incidental. For Pieter Bruegel, every symbol carries meaning. The fool's caps, often associated with jesters and folly, reveal a deeper allegory beneath the surface. In Bruegel's time, such imagery would have been immediately understood as a symbol of moral blindness, societal hypocrisy, and human pride. The feathers on the hats, often seen as emblems of vanity, reinforce this critique. These beggars, stripped of power and agency, become tragic representatives of human frailty, at once vulnerable and unwitting participants in a cruel social order. Bruegel's depiction, unflinching and raw, captures their physical suffering while inviting us to see beyond appearances. Are they mere outcasts, or do they reflect the flaws of a society that ignores its most vulnerable? In the center of the group, one beggar collapses on the ground, his body splayed in a position of helpless defeat. Yet the remaining figures seem strangely indifferent, as if trapped in their own silent ritual. Their isolation within an empty, ambiguous setting only heightens the sense of dislocation. Where are they? Why has Pieter Bruegel stripped away all sense of place, leaving us with only the figures to contemplate? The lack of context forces us to focus entirely on the beggars themselves, as symbols of suffering and social neglect. Many scholars have interpreted the beggars as a veiled commentary on the turbulent political climate of Bruegel's time. The Netherlands, under Spanish rule in the late 16th century, was rife with oppression and unrest. Some have suggested that the beggar's deformities symbolize the crippling effects of political and social injustice. Others see the painting as a broader reflection of human folly, how society, blind to its moral failings, allows the most vulnerable to suffer in silence. Bruegel's genius lies in his ability to layer these meanings, blending harsh realism with allegory to create a work that feels both specific and timeless. Despite its small size, the painting is filled with astonishing detail. Bruegel's careful rendering of the beggars' bodies, their gaunt faces and their tattered clothing speaks to his observational mastery. He paints them with a brutal honesty that avoids sentimentality yet imbues them with dignity. There is no mockery here, no easy judgment, only a piercing depiction of human fragility. Bruegel's choice of earthy, muted tones adds to the somber atmosphere, while the undefined background creates an eerie timelessness, as if the figures exist outside of place and time. In The Beggars, Bruegel draws attention to those who are often ignored or forgotten. By elevating these marginalized figures to the center of his composition, he compels us to confront uncomfortable truths about society and ourselves. How do we treat the vulnerable? How easily do we look away from suffering? These questions remain as relevant today as they were in Bruegel's time. As with so many of his works, The Beggars challenges us to see beyond the surface. It is a powerful meditation on human weakness, pride, and indifference. A small painting that carries an immense moral weight. In his final year, Bruegel left us not only a masterpiece of realism, but a mirror to our own humanity, urging us to reflect on the choices we make and the world we shape. In — Pieter Bruegel the Elder painted The Peasant and the Nest Robber, a compelling work housed in the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna. Created during the final year of Bruegel's life, this small yet powerful painting reflects his enduring fascination with allegory, rural life, and the darker undercurrents of human nature. At first glance, the painting depicts an ordinary scene. A peasant trudging forward with a walking stick, carrying a sack slung over his shoulder. Above him, in a striking juxtaposition, another figure clambers up a tree to rob a bird's nest. But as with so many of Bruegel's works, the seemingly simple subject holds deeper meaning. The two figures form a dynamic contrast, one grounded, burdened by life's struggles, while the other is sly and opportunistic, reaching for what does not belong to him. Their pairing invites reflection on human morality, greed, and the consequences of selfish actions. The painting's composition highlights Bruegel's remarkable storytelling ability. The diagonal line formed by the peasant's path draws the eye upward to the nest robber in the tree, creating a natural flow of movement and tension. The peasant's hunched posture and weathered face suggest resignation to his lot in life, while the nest robber's precarious climb adds an element of risk. This visual dynamic speaks to broader truths about society, how the hard-working and the deceitful coexist, each driven by their own motivations. Bruegel's use of symbolism deepens the painting's message. Birds and their nests often appear in his works as metaphors for innocence, vulnerability, or fleeting opportunity. Here, the theft of the nest suggests greed and exploitation, while the peasant's steady march hints at endurance and survival. Together, they form a parable about the choices people make in the face of hardship and temptation. Bruegel leaves us to consider, who is the greater fool, the man laboring under his burdens, or the thief risking everything for a small, ill-gotten reward? Rendered in Bruegel's characteristic earthy tones, the landscape itself adds to the story. The lush yet rugged countryside with its twisted trees and uneven ground mirrors the harsh realities of peasant life. Bruegel does not romanticize the rural setting. Instead, he portrays it with honesty, grounding the scene in the physical and moral challenges faced by his subjects. The figures' rough clothing, weathered faces, and bare feet are not idealized but reflect Bruegel's keen eye for realism and detail. Thematically, The Peasant and the Nest Robber ties into Bruegel's broader body of work, which often examines human folly, vice, and perseverance. This painting, like the misanthrope or the blind leading the blind, serves as a moral commentary, a visual fable that compels viewers to question human behavior. Is the nest robber's theft a minor act of survival or a broader symbol of society's injustices? Does the peasant's labor signify dignity, or is he merely indifferent to the actions of others? Bruegel leaves these questions open, inviting us to find meaning within the ambiguity. In its small scale and deceptively simple subject matter, The Peasant and the Nest Robber encapsulates Bruegel's genius, the ability to elevate the mundane into the profound. By focusing on the struggles and choices of ordinary people, Bruegel exposes universal truths about human nature. His vision remains as relevant today as it was in the 16th century, urging us to reflect on the paths we choose and the burdens we carry. In 2010, the art world celebrated a remarkable discovery. The Wine of St. Martin's Day, an extraordinary painting by Pieter Bruegel the Elder. Hidden for centuries, this monumental work was found to be one of the largest oil-on-canvas paintings by the artist and is now housed in the Museo del Prado in Madrid. Measuring nearly 2.5 meters wide, it offers a sprawling, chaotic scene of indulgence, humanity, and celebration, rendered with Bruegel's signature mix of humor, critique, and extraordinary detail. The painting depicts the Feast of St. Martin, a traditional celebration across Europe where newly fermented wine is enjoyed in abundance. St. Martin, known for his charity, is honored every year on November 11th, a day of feasting, merriment, and, as Pieter Bruegel shows us, excess. At the heart of the composition, a large wine barrel becomes the focus of the scene, with villagers clambering over one another to drink, hoard, and indulge. The sheer energy of the crowd is palpable. Arms reach, mouths open, bodies push and stumble in a chaotic frenzy. It's as if Pieter Bruegel freezes a single moment of unrestrained gluttony and human desperation. Yet, amidst the chaos, Bruegel's brilliance lies in his ability to balance the comic with the tragic. At first glance, the painting might appear festive and light-hearted, filled with villagers reveling in the joy of the season. But upon closer inspection, darker undertones emerge. The people's desperation for wine borders on grotesque faces are distorted, dignity forgotten, and humanity reduced to instinctive greed. A man sprawls helplessly on the ground. Another clutches his jug tightly, afraid to share. These vignettes serve as moral warnings about overindulgence and the loss of virtue, themes Bruegel frequently explored in his works. The composition itself is a masterstroke of storytelling. The crowded figures form a whirlpool-like movement around the wine barrel, drawing the viewer's eye into the heart of the scene. Bruegel's attention to detail is extraordinary. Every face, gesture, and object contributes to the larger narrative. The variety of expressions and actions invites the viewer to pause and examine each character, revealing new layers of meaning with every glance. In the background, more figures dance, sing, and stumble across a rural landscape, emphasizing the widespread nature of the feast and its accompanying chaos. Bruegel's exploration of human nature often straddles the line between satire and social commentary. In The Wine of St. Martin's Day, the wine itself becomes a symbol, a gift that can unite people in celebration but also expose their basest instincts. The painting reflects Bruegel's keen understanding of human folly and vice, reminding viewers of the dangers of excess and lack of moderation. It is both a celebration of community and a cautionary tale of indulgence gone awry. What makes this work even more remarkable is its rediscovery. Long believed lost, the painting's unveiling in 2010 offered new insight into Bruegel's late career and his skill in tackling monumental compositions. Its scale and complexity demonstrate Bruegel's unmatched ability to portray life in all its vivid, unfiltered reality. The Wine of St. Martin's Day stands as a testament to Pieter Bruegel the Elder's legacy. Through his unflinching lens, he captures not only the physical world but the timeless nature of human behavior, our joys, our weaknesses, and our capacity for both celebration and folly. It is a scene that feels as relevant today as it did in the 16th century. A masterpiece that invites us to laugh, reflect, and perhaps reconsider the balance between indulgence and restraint. Little is known about the circumstances of Bruegel's death, though in 1569, the final year of his life, the City Council of Brussels released him from the obligation of working with a guard of Spanish soldiers stationed in his home, suggesting that the politically subversive content of his work was well understood. No paintings exist from this year implying that Pieter Bruegel died from illness, but there is no way of ruling out a more sinister explanation. In any case, Bruegel's relatively early demise, even for the period in which he lived, must be viewed as one of the tragedies of Renaissance art history. During his lifetime, Pieter Bruegel was seen to have made a significant break from the popular Italian Renaissance style, creating works that focused on landscape and contemporary life rather than the grand narratives favored by the Mediterranean masters of the past century. In so doing, he helped to ensure that Renaissance art in Northern Europe would unfold in its own unique direction, contributing to a Northern Renaissance style that inspired subsequent artists such as Peter Paul Rubens and Rembrandt. Pieter Bruegel paintings have influenced a range of developments in modern art. The contemporary critic Wilfried Seipel writes that, beyond all psychological and iconological interpretation, and independent of biographical and contemporary historical preconditions, Bruegel's surviving paintings form a cycle, indeed an epic of human existence in its helplessness not only in the face of nature but also when confronted with the apparently immutable course of world history. Pieter Bruegel's decision to represent common people engaged in everyday scenes of domestic life paved the way for the Dutch Golden Age painters of the following century, and also predicted the socially minded realism and naturalism of the mid to late 19th century, including the work of Gustave Courbet, Jean-François Millet, and the Russian Peredvizhniki school. During the 20th century, poets such as Auden and William Carlos Williams were equally inspired by Pieter Bruegel's egalitarian vision, the latter dedicating a 10-poem cycle to Bruegel in his final collection, Pictures from Bruegel and Other Poems, 1962.